Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Right Answers Mostly, a podcast on what you didn't learn in history class but wanted to. My name's Claire Donald.
My name is Tess Bellomo.
And we have a very special episode today, a special guest. We have the co-founder of Alice Mushrooms, Charlotte Cruz, joining us today. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi.
We are so happy to have you. So we saw a lot of ads last year for Alice Mushrooms, like everywhere over Instagram. And we just immediately were like, this is fascinating. First off, the branding is just so good.
Gorgeous.
And
Thank you.
it kind of came at a moment that, both of us were very interested in knowing more about functional mushrooms and the power of mushrooms, and obviously seeing that mushrooms are very trendy in the past year.
Yes, and we're doing a whole themed month. Our theme this month is sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And so with the power of mushrooms, we were like, there could be no better person to talk to than you.
Amazing. Well, I'm happy to talk all things mushrooms all the time.
Beautiful. Yeah, we have dipped our toes in mushrooms of all types before.
Of all types, you could say.
Yeah. But we're excited to learn more. Can you tell listeners a little bit about yourself, about what Alice even is?
Yeah. So Alice, we make functional mushroom chocolates. So there's a lot to unpack there, right? Particularly starting with what functional means. So functional, they're a class of mushrooms that are different from mushrooms that you get at the grocery store, your culinary mushrooms, and also different from psychedelic mushrooms or mushrooms that can induce a psychedelic experience. So functional mushrooms kind of sit in the middle between culinary and psychedelic, and that they have way more nutritional benefit than and medicinal benefit than your typical culinary mushroom, but they don't have the compound psilocybin in them that can induce a psychedelic experience. So it's, people are always like, is this going to make me trip? And I'm like, no, it's chemically impossible. The compound isn't in there. And it can't happen. And so we use different functional mushrooms. So there are different functional mushrooms that are good for different things. For example, lion's mane is incredible for brain health. Reishi is incredible for sleep. Cordyceps is incredible for boosting your overall energy levels and vitality. And so there are different functional mushrooms you can plug into your wellness routine. So we have two chocolates. We have one called Nightcap for sleep, and we have one called Brainstorm for focus and energy. And both of those use functional mushrooms and other nootropics and herbal supplements. And we're about a year old. We just had our 1 year anniversary, so we're very new.
Oh, happy birthday,
Yes.
Alice.
Thank you.
And what better way to celebrate than with some chocolates?
Yeah, no kidding.
And we love what, you say about that, like your wellness routine should be enjoyable, and it shouldn't be like you are holding your nose trying to like swallow a bunch of these pills that you're like, what is this? And like the idea that you can indulge and also feel like you're doing something healthy for your mind and your body is just so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we say all the time, indulge, don't endure. And that really comes from our kind of founding mantra. So my business partner, Lindsay, her background's in pharmaceuticals and mine is in food. So it's kind of this perfect marriage of food as medicine, right? And Lindsay, my business partner, she originally had the idea because she was trying to get away from pharmaceuticals. She was like, there has to be a better natural alternative to a lot of the things that I've been treating with, different medicines and pharmaceutical compounds. And so she got really into mushrooms and then realized, wait, every functional mushroom supplement on the market is a powder, a pill, a tincture, and it's really reminiscent of pharmaceuticals. And we're just not the type of gals who want to kind of like knock back a bad tasting powder or do a bitter tincture. We think that it doesn't have to be uncomfortable. And like, why are we enduring all of these things that are supposed to make us feel good when they should be things that we celebrate and look forward to and taste good, because then they make us feel good.
For sure.
So that's really where chocolate came in. Lindsay, particularly in pharmaceuticals, she learned how important it is, the delivery method of a medication and how that directly affects patient compliance, because it's pretty simple, right? Like if you're handed something that you're supposed to take that doesn't taste good, like you do it for 3 days and you're like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm out.
Yeah.
So how can we make this something people look forward to so that we can almost like trick them into having better health?
Completely.
And that's all it is, really. You
Right.
know? Yeah, that's so interesting how you guys both started in sort of different fields than where you're at now. Can you talk a little bit about that journey? Because, Claire and I are big components of just like, we want women to feel like they can always sort of explore different career or, change their jobs in some way. And can you talk about that experience of, was it jarring to go
Totally.
into mushrooms from food, or was it sort of natural for you?
My career took a lot of different turns. My first job out of college, I was in journalism, like covering politics, if
Oh
that
my
tells you
gosh.
Oh,
So you're like,
how
wow.
I
many
need
turns I've
mushrooms of
taken.
all time,
Yeah.
of all
Yeah,
types.
truly. I was working actually for NBC News in Washington in 2015 and 2016
Oh
and
my
covering
God.
that election. And I was like, I've hit my
Oh my
cap
Good
God.
night.
on like how many politician speeches I can watch,
Oh my God, no kidding.
particularly during that era.
Yeah, it's
Very
what a time.
painful.
Yeah.
Um, and then I ended up going into media more in a lifestyle way. So like doing branded content with different partners at more like, Refinery 29. I was there for a little bit. So that type of media. And then I really got to a point where I was like, I need to do something that aligns with who I am as a person and that moves forward my vision. And food just kept calling out to me as pretty much the most basic thing that we can do to feel good, that often really gets overlooked. Like our food system is has a lot of problems, and it's not something that people pay a lot of attention to, even though it's probably the most important thing in our lives.
Right.
So I made the decision kind of during COVID. I feel like everyone made big life changes during COVID.
Sure did.
And I went back to NYU and got my master's in food studies. And then kind of just started working on early stage consumer brands through that process. And then, like, literally met Lindsay on the phone. She lives in LA, I live in New York. And I was looking for my next thing, and she was looking for a business partner. We both had like a loosely connected mutual friend who put us on a text thread and was like, I think this might be something.
That's so
And
cool.
so we texted a little bit, got on a couple calls, started working together, and didn't even meet in person for like 3 months.
No way.
And then literally met in person and then went out to dinner and got some champagne, and we were like, okay, we're business partners
I
now.
guess we're doing this.
That's how it always, I mean, that's how Claire and I started too. You just get a little tipsy and you're like, oh, we have some great ideas.
Yeah,
And
we have fun
Yeah.
together.
let's
This
make
should
this
work.
happen.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. And Lindsay really similar. She was in pharma, was the only career path she'd had. And she just really started to feel like this isn't aligning with who I am as a person, and what can I do that can align. And
Right.
she's very much a dreamer, and she's so like got an incredible vision from the big picture. And when she gets on an idea, she's like a dog with a bone, and she just went for it.
Wow.
So nice to have that in a business partner for sure.
It really
Yes.
is.
For sure.
And I'm sure she saw a lot of shit in big pharma. And,
Yeah.
I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
like,
Oh yeah.
that's a whole nother story.
Yeah. So what called you guys to mushrooms? Were both of you like, this is the way that we should go? Were there different ideas or?
Yeah, it was always mushrooms. For Lindsay, it was very much coming out of pharmaceuticals. Okay, what can I do to address the root causes of things I've been treating and not keep looking at band-aid solutions?
Right.
And mushrooms became this really obvious answer, as so many functional mushrooms are able to address those root causes. And for me, it was funny enough, my experience in culinary. Like I have grew up a very picky eater. Now I'll literally eat anything, but until I was like 18 years old, it was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and
Which are a
That's the
gorgeous
good life.
thing.
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a bad life, but I finally got to
Maybe
a
not
point where like,
sustainable.
okay,
Yeah.
and when I started working in food, it was like that's when I started getting a lot of exposure to really beautiful culinary mushrooms, like more than just your buttons or your shiitakes, right? Like I was working with like really beautiful yellow oysters and maitake mushrooms, and that kind of sent me down this little rabbit hole of like, okay, like let me keep kind of opening doors in this mushroom space and experimenting and exploring. And then, Lindsay and I got connected, and it was like, oh, stars have aligned. This is what it is.
Yeah.
Do you mind going into more of like what are the major differences? There are three major types of mushrooms you're saying, right? Culinary,
Yeah.
functional, and psychedelic.
Psychedelic.
Yeah. Do you mind talking more about those and the differences between them? And
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I like to think of it as three buckets with functional sitting in the middle. So, psychedelic mushrooms, they have the compound in them psilocybin, which is able to produce a psychedelic experience. So, that's what you're seeing across any types of strains of psychedelic mushrooms. It's because of psilocybin in there. And so that's what's able to induce that type of experience that can be really medicinal, can be really joyful, can be really therapeutic. But there's not much else in those mushrooms that you're really looking for. And then in culinary mushrooms, there's a lot of nutritional benefits. So, right, you get your vitamin D, you get all these different things that you would get, for example, like from a nutritious diet that includes vegetables and fruits and, protein and whatever it is that you're incorporating into your diet. But culinary mushrooms don't have compounds in them that can really help your long-term health or work as a nootropic or an adaptogen. So they're not medicinal, they're nutritious. I think that's the easiest way to put it. Whereas functional mushrooms are medicinal. So there are different compounds in functional mushrooms that can make them incredible for you and work like a supplement. So it's a step up from food.
Right.
Is really how to think about it.
And what does nootropic mean?
Nootropic is essentially something that helps your brain work better. So
beautiful.
lion's mane mushroom, lion's mane is one of the mushrooms that we use. It's kind of your classic nootropic in that lion's mane is able to directly nourish your brain cells and connect new neural pathways and like honestly regrow your brain to help with memory, cognition, and focus. So a lot of people are looking at it. I mean, it's interesting. Our demographic spans from young people looking for brands that identify with their values to then we have a lot of customers who are in their 60s and 70s who are looking to protect their brain health and keep their memory sharp. And that's become a huge thing as of late that we're, I feel like we've really hit a chord with.
Yeah, I feel like recently, you kind of see the decline in popularity of drinking and especially with Gen Z being like, what are we doing to our bodies, and looking at sort of other ways that you can still, enjoy yourself, like psychedelic mushrooms. What do you think kind of started in the past couple years, the popularity with microdosing and that sort of trend?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right on. This sober curious movement has fueled a lot of interest both in psychedelics but also in functional mushrooms. I mean, we see a lot of people using our brainstorm chocolate, which is our energy and focus chocolate, actually as a party drug replacement. People are going out and they're bringing a tin of chocolates with them and they're sharing the chocolates with their friends, and it gives you this, every time we have a party we have it out on platters because it gives you this boost of energy, makes you a little more social, it makes you feel a little bit more present. And doesn't, for people who might be wary of psychedelics, doesn't have the possibility of having a psychedelic experience.
Right,
so
it's like gentle.
It's gentle.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is nice because you never know. It seems safer emotionally.
Exactly. It's like my mom will do that, whereas I would have a hard time convincing my mom to do psychedelics.
Right, never say never, but for now.
Yeah.
I'm
working on her.
Right. Slowly but surely, aren't we all with our parents? Are they all grown the same way?
So every mushroom is actually grown differently. So mushrooms are grown in the wild. They'll grow on different types of different trees, different types of wood, from the ground, different types of bark. So our mushrooms are grown and harvested on, it's called substrate, which is the fancy word for like mushroom soil, essentially.
Right.
That's most like what they would be grown on in nature if they were harvested or in the wild. So a lot of different types of things mushrooms will grow on. And I think that, kind of going back to your last question about why people are so interested in mushrooms, I think that is another aspect of why mushrooms are so popular, being that they can grow on anything, meaning that a lot of mushrooms can grow on toxic waste and clean it up, or oil spills, or so many different things. So I think as people start to learn more about how mushrooms can help our environment or be leather substitutes or meat substitutes or clean up toxic waste, then it's like, okay, that's amazing. And then also they can do this for my mental health, and also they're incredible to eat. And it kind of just contributes to this overwhelming growth of like what we call the shroom boom, right?
Sure.
Where like everyone is so excited about mushrooms, and they're getting into every facet of life, of culture, of the dialogue.
They really are so good. I went to the farmer's market yesterday, and in honor of this episode, we got $30 worth of fancy mushrooms. We were like, wow, it's pricey, but it is just so good. And so this is a dumb question maybe, but when you cook them down, do you lose any nutrition in them?
No, you're really just losing water.
Got it.
So mushrooms have a really high water content. So that's really what you're losing when you cook them down.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, and with your chocolates, it's something that is meant to be taken over time. It's not quite an immediate effect, correct? Or does it have a little bit of
Yes and
both?
no.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, going back to like this delivery method as it affects how people are going to use something, delivery method includes not only the taste and the experience of it, but also the feeling that you're going to get. So again, as we were trying all these functional mushroom products, we were like, okay, I am taking this, it doesn't taste good, and it doesn't work instantly
Mm-hmm.
because really what people don't understand and what I think a lot of companies don't educate about is that functional mushrooms need to be taken every day over the course of about 3 weeks to allow the nutrients time to compound in your body and start making those subtle but really powerful shifts in your being. So you're not going to feel a functional mushroom on day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, but day 25 there's a lot of things that will be happening in your body that will be making you feel better. And I think we're very much in a culture, and I'm just as in it as like immediate gratification
Yeah,
is what I want.
Totally.
So we formulated the mushrooms alongside fast acting ingredients. So you'll get that now and later approach. So, for example, in our brainstorm chocolate, right, there's lion's mane and cordyceps, which are incredible mushrooms for mind and body. But instantly, you're going to feel a little bit of natural caffeine. And then also, there's a fatty acid in there that helps immediately with brain and cognitive function. And then in our sleep chocolate, we've got reishi mushroom, which will help regulate your sleep cycles in the long term and help lower stress levels. But then there's also zinc, chamomile, magnesium, and L-theanine, which you'll feel right away.
Y'all have just thought of everything. My God.
I know. I'm just truly so impressed.
I am too. I am too.
And can you talk a little bit about the branding behind it and like what inspirations you guys got for, I mean, even like looking at your, Instagram, it's just so beautiful and colorful and sort of what artists or different artwork you've been inspired by for the branding.
And for everyone listening, we'll have a link to their website in our show notes. Go check it out. It's so cute.
Yes.
Y'all have just crushed it.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
I mean, the brand, right, is loosely inspired by the character Alice from Alice in Wonderland, but we don't want to use any type of Alice in Wonderland branding. It's really just her curiosity. So as we kind of distilled what the brand identity was, we kept going back to this idea of curiosity and also the fact that what we love most about Alice is the fact that she's okay with not knowing things and she's excited by not knowing things. And like in the world of mushrooms, it's still a really burgeoning field of study. Like mycology is just now becoming a major at some colleges, whereas, plant sciences have been a recognized field of study for decades and centuries. And so there's still so much we don't know about mushrooms. And so embracing that kind of mystery and wanting to lean into it and having that kind of playful idea that we don't know everything and that's okay is really fundamental to our brand. And then in terms of, the visual aspect of the branding, we wanted it to feel accessible and playful and fun. And I think accessible was the most important thing for us. Again, as we looked at a lot of other functional mushroom brands or players in the space, we found that a lot of branding felt very psychedelic forward. And we wanted to have something that felt a little more approachable, a little more accessible to people who maybe have no interest in psychedelics and they're a little bit intimidated by it. And so they haven't tried functional mushrooms. So we want to have a visual aesthetic that feels approachable to everyone to come in because we're not just trying to like compete with other mushroom brands and take their customers. That's not really our end game. Like our end game is introducing more people to the benefits of mushrooms and bringing more people into the mushroom conversation. So our goal is really speaking to people who otherwise may have felt isolated as it relates to or left out of the marketing of other functional mushrooms.
Well, you guys really nailed it.
Yeah, you did. And we love that. We say that all the time on our podcast about like it's okay to not know things. And that's actually a really great thing. And that's, kind of why we have this podcast is like a safe space to be curious and learn more about that. So we love that that's what you're doing with your brand as well. And I think that the branding is so different. And it also speaks to, I feel like a lot of the female community as well. Do you find that y'all being two female co-founders, are there a lot of females in that space or are you guys kind of leading the way or, what is this space even like?
Yeah. So I think, for the last 10-ish years, the space was really male dominated. And a lot of the functional mushroom brands, again, their branding felt really masculine.
Yeah.
And particularly as it relates even to the psychedelic space right now, is a lot of that is being led by men. And there's this real masculine energy
Oh, we
kind of
know.
leading the charge. Yeah.
No
Yeah.
shock.
Yeah.
Shock there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would say, I mean, we're definitely early in terms of being women in this space, but it's been really cool to see more and more other women get into the space. And I think right now there's a lot of great female-led and founded functional mushroom brands, but it's, we're all still young and it's still very early. Um, but it's a really exciting place to be in.
Yeah, yeah, it's very inspiring, and we have a lot of younger female listeners, and get advice or get asked advice ourselves of what would you say to someone starting your own company, especially with a friend? Do you have any advice for our female listeners on what you would say?
Yeah. I mean, I think just having your vision and relentlessly wanting to execute on it, and being, I mean, there's so many pieces of advice I would give.
Yeah,
You're right.
But
like how much time do we have?
I mean, yeah, how much time do you have? 6 hours? Something that I've been thinking about lately, and this just comes from a recent experience that I had, is that women sometimes, you're going to get into positions in your career as a female leader where you're going to be working with men who don't believe you, don't take you seriously, don't think that you're good at math, don't think that, you counted something correctly. And they've been in the industry longer because they're, whatever, they're in logistics or whatever it is they're doing. And you're going to be faced a lot of people who just don't believe you, don't take you seriously. And just powering through that and not giving up on yourself. I had a experience recently where I just kept kind of banging my head up against the wall about something I knew I was right about. And I had a lot of men telling me like, nope, that's not correct, XYZ. And I just kept pushing, and finally they were like, oh yeah, wait, you are right. And it was, a $30,000 situation that, and I think it's really easy. I mean, even a year ago, I probably would have been like, oh, I must have messed up,
Right.
and not pushed on it. And when this happened, I was like so proud of myself because it felt like such a moment of growth to just have that tenacity and keep pushing, because it's really easy to not, and to just let people tell you what's right. And so that just becomes a larger piece of advice, which is that trust yourself, believe in yourself, and don't let people who may speak louder or be older than you or more aggressive than you dictate how you're going to run your business.
That's amazing advice. Because, yeah, I think also, women can tend to be more people pleasers. So it's like, well, I also don't want to make, this man in charge think that I'm being too much or aggressive, or, I want them to like me, because in that way, women do get ahead by being likable, which is, messed up. So I think that's very powerful advice.
It also must help having your co-founder. I know for us, like it helps to know that you have someone in your team, and even talking to another female founded business, it's just so nice to have this community of women to all remind each other, like, no, trust your instinct. You are smart, you are capable and powerful. And that's so inspiring to hear.
Yeah. I mean, I know that some people like work better alone, or, having a co-founder maybe isn't how they would run things, but I don't know what I would do without Lindsay.
Same.
I think like I look at other founders who are solo founders, and I mean, my jaw's on the floor. I have no idea how they do it. I think having a partner that you trust that also balances you out, like Lindsay and I are complete opposites in terms of how our brains work and what we pay attention to and all of that. And it's just like, that has made us so much stronger. And then also the respect that we have for one another and the different perspectives that we bring to the table. Because I don't think any decision, we discuss everything. Like, only small things will make decisions without each other on. And I think it's so important, even just like, even if you're going to go with the decision you wanted to go with anyway, to have that second person to bounce things off of. Because I think at least I would feel really isolated and constantly second guessing myself if I didn't have a partner to kind of like cheer me on, validate me, challenge me, make sure we're always making the right decisions and looking at things from every angle.
I completely agree.
Yeah, and how powerful to have a, female co-founder. It's just the best.
It's invaluable for sure.
Yeah.
And
It
with
really is.
pushing yourself right now, I know I've seen y'all are selling in coffee shops, so the brand is accessible anywhere because it is functional, correct?
Yeah, so functional mushrooms are 1,000% legal all over the world. So there's nowhere in the world where you couldn't buy a functional mushroom.
Right.
It's
And
regulated the same way like a shiitake mushroom is regulated at the
Okay.
grocery store.
is anyone any age?
Any
Is
age,
it? That's
yeah. I mean, I would
amazing.
say if you're looking at, giving functional mushrooms to a young child, probably talk to a naturopath or a doctor
Yeah.
because the dosing that we have in there is geared towards adults, but I haven't seen anything that would um, make it so like I haven't seen anything that says kids can't take this or this is unsafe for
Right.
kids.
And so I guess when I was saying when you're pushing yourself, I know that you're in the functional mushroom space. Do you have any insight on what's going on with the psychedelic mushroom space? And is that something that y'all would want to push yourselves to get into that space as well? I believe it's legal in Oregon right now,
Yeah,
correct?
Oregon and Colorado are the farthest along. So, kind of a overview of where the space is right now. Oregon has had a lot of trouble with their rollout.
Mm.
So, Oregon was the first state to legalize psychedelic assisted therapy and psilocybin. So, their legalization process essentially looks like there are treatment centers where someone can go check in, have a guided therapeutic psychedelic experience, check out. And what Oregon did, which is kind of coming back to bite them, is that they gave counties the option to opt out. So essentially, every county in Oregon, except for Portland and Bend, opted out.
Oh,
Oh.
So it's become kind of tough over there because then if they're opting out, then you can't grow within 30 yards of that county or whatever it is. And so it's actually become a bit of a mess. And I think they're working it out. But Colorado then passed a similar bill about a year later, and they didn't allow counties to opt out.
They're
So
like,
it's
we
kind of one of
all
those
want this.
things.
yes.
Yeah,
Please.
where they were
Sure.
just like, this isn't part of the bill. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the state passes it because if that had happened, right, everywhere outside of Denver and Boulder would be like, no.
Absolutely.
So every state that passes it, I think, learned something from the last state. I think it's tricky. It's going to be a long road. There's a lot of murkiness I mean, you're in California, right? Like there's been a lot on the ballot in California. Governor just turned down a decriminalization initiative. Even in states that are at the forefront, there's still a lot of headbutting as it relates to how do we legalize these and in a safe and accessible and effective way. And I think that also leads to the other issue is that where these treatment centers are legal, they're very expensive.
Right.
And I think that's something that everyone in the space is trying to work on to figure out a way to make it more accessible. We're personally members of a nonprofit that works around advocacy and um, legislation work and research around microdosing amounts of psilocybin because currently as it stands you can go in check yourself into this treatment center, you have a 6 to 7 hour experience, you have therapy before, therapy afterwards, that becomes in some places a $10,000 experience.
Oh, wow.
And that's not something that your average person can do as it relates to the time commitment and to the financial commitment.
Right.
And it's so crazy when you think about it, particularly with mushrooms, because it's like you could grow these in your closet for, $100.
Right.
Like,
And be doing it very irresponsibly and have terrible trips.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
right. I mean, obviously, I'm not necessarily advocating for that, but it's just kind of a hard thing to wrap your head around in that this is something that grows very easily, and yet I'm being charged thousands and thousands of dollars to do it in this very tax heavy way. So we're trying to figure out ways that we can make microdose amounts of psilocybin legal so that people can buy them kind of from a dispensary and take it home and do it on their time and do it in a safe way. So this is a very long-winded answer, but it's a crazy space right now. I think to answer your original question, yes, it's something we're watching really closely. We would love to be involved. We manufacture in Colorado. We have an emerging medicine business attorney that we work with who helps keep us up to date on everything. But I think it is going to take some time.
Do you think that the mushroom space is looking to the weed space for any guidance on rolling out legalization and the way that they sell and all of that?
Totally.
Yeah.
I think, it took cannabis decades.
Mhm.
I think cannabis paved the way in a lot of ways for even us having this conversation, particularly as it relates to something that is very bipartisan, which is veteran support.
Mm.
Cannabis was really critical in helping manage a lot of veterans manage their PTSD and their stress and their anxiety.
Yeah.
And psilocybin has the same potential, I think, even on a grander scale. So there's a lot of learnings, not only from demonstrating therapeutic value, but also in the actual logistical rollout. I think it will condense the psilocybin timeline, probably half of what cannabis is, but that still is looking like, 10 years probably.
Right.
I know. I was just thinking of like where we were 10 years ago, and now we can walk into a basically candy store full of weed
Oh,
and
yeah.
get, and just like I used to just be like, this is never gonna happen. And whenever we talk about these things, I'm always just like, isn't it crazy how there's so much paranoia and misconception with, these natural things that come from the earth that can be so
Mhm.
beneficial to mental health. And then alcohol is like the most, truly, and
Oh,
I like
yeah.
to drink, but like alcohol is the most dangerous, one of
Right.
the most dangerous drugs. And there's, you can drink your night away,
Right. It's so
and there's no
normal.
regulations, and it's just I look forward to that judgment, decreasing with
Totally.
time.
And
Even cigarettes, right? Or
Yeah.
right.
even caffeine.
Right.
I mean,
There's we have
yeah.
so many legal drugs.
And like
It's interesting the arbitrary line that we draw in the sand.
and
100%.
when you were mentioning, if like kids can take Alice, I was thinking about how, a lot of parents put their kids on Adderall, and like this could be such an amazing other natural supplement, if you're looking for that focus, or, not to
Yeah,
diagnose people's mental health, but like there just are so many things before, like you said, putting that band-aid just over it
Mhm.
and just being like, deal with it.
totally.
Let's not get to the root. Let's
Right.
not heal.
I mean, I get emails, I mean, multiple times a week from parents that are like, "Hey, my doctor just wanted to put my kid who's 12 years old on a bunch of Adderall. Like, could I try this first? I don't really want to give my kid Adderall." And again, my first answer is always like, "Ask your doctor."
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't have a
Right.
medical
Right.
degree,
Like, I don't want to say yes or no to you.
but yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like these kids are getting put on really strong prescription drugs, and to try something at least first that isn't so strong, I think is a really, smart decision. Like
Right.
it, Adderall, Ritalin, Vyvanse, they're really serious drugs, and
Yeah.
they can be incredible for the people who need them, and they've helped so many people, but it's also not something that you want to just take lightly.
Right.
Exactly. There are options.
Did you grow up like in the homeopathic space, or
No, not at
uh,
all.
okay? I always wonder because I did. My mom was very like, I don't even want you taking an Advil if you don't have to, and so I always think it's interesting to talk to people that have dedicated their life to it now, because
Yeah.
it's really commendable.
Yeah, no, I grew up in Lexington, Kentucky. My
Uh,
like, I was not in that like wellness space that I'm in
Okay.
now, I think. It's something that really came to me as I became an adult, I think, and was
Yeah.
just like looking for ways to feel good and just uncovering so many things that helped that I
right.
hadn't had access to before.
And there's
Yeah.
just more access to information now. And you talked about with the veterans helping with PTSD with these, natural remedies. And I know that Alice donates a portion of profits to the Hope Project, and you're a founding member of the microdosing collective that you were talking about. Do you mind explaining more about what those are and what exactly your role is in this space?
Yeah. So I know I already touched on the microdosing collective, but really that's the first nonprofit in the US that's dedicated to advancing research and legislation around microdose amounts of psilocybin. So really what we do there is there's a lot of incredible, brilliant people that are other founding members or on the board that are leading clinical trials and also doing a lot of advocacy as it relates to different politicians and published papers and media. So it's a really cool community to be a part of. And then, that's kind of we look at our formulations as a now and later approach, and we also look at our give back as a now and later approach, right? With the microdosing collective being our later
Mm-hmm.
approach, because that's a really long game that we're playing there in terms of this is going to take a really long time. What we're doing now, because we know the way that psychedelics can help people who need help right now, is working with the Hope Project. So the Hope Project is this incredible nonprofit organization founded by this woman named Allison Wilson, whose husband was a 4-time Navy SEAL.
Oh my God.
And he came home and, had a lot of PTSD and was really struggling and found so much help with psychedelic assisted therapy. But what Allison realized is that she also was traumatized, and there aren't resources for women, wives of veterans, and then also women in the military. And again, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, is like the psychedelic space is really masculine, and women need a very different space than men, particularly I think women who've struggled with sexual abuse or been in the military. There needs to be a safe female space. So what Allison did is she started the Hope Project, and they help provide integration and psychedelic assisted therapy specifically to women who have been affected by deployment and military, whether that be a wife or a woman who has served.
Wow, that's amazing.
I know that's such a forgotten space.
Yes.
I don't even know if forgotten would be the word, because it just would be something that I wouldn't even think to focus on as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely put that in the show notes as well to anyone that wants to get involved or go check it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, we were looking for so long about what group that we wanted to support, and the second we met her, it was like I almost started crying within 10 minutes of hearing her speak, because it's just there isn't a lot of recognition for women in this space right now, or a lot of resources directed towards women in this space. And so her story really moved us, and we're so honored that we get to support the work they do.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, there's still just such a lack of, research with women's mental health, women's bodies. Like, just I think as you grow up, you're like, oh yeah, there's textbooks filled with everything that could ever happen to a man, physically, mentally, but just a couple pages on maybe what we might go through. So we always love bringing attention to that on the show, and we talk a lot about that on this podcast.
Absolutely. That's so interesting.
Well, we do have a question for you as we wrap up the interview that we ask all of our guests.
Yes.
Claire, you want to take it away?
If you could, we ask this to all of our guests, but we're going to kind of customize it for you. We usually ask if you could smoke a joint, but we'll add in or take mushrooms, psychedelic for this case, with someone dead or alive in history. Who would it be and why?
Ooh.
History, pop culture, all the things.
I mean, this is the first one that pops to mind right now because I'm in a huge Talking Heads kick, but David Byrne. I think it would be so fun to take mushrooms with David Byrne and like dance.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. Yeah, what else would you do?
Exactly. What would you dance
like,
to?
I want to wear the big Stop Making Sense suit, right?
Yes.
And like take dance lessons with him.
So good.
That sounds gorgeous.
And just have a wild ride.
Yes, that sounds beautiful. That's a great answer.
That is a great answer. We love putting people on the spot for that.
We do.
It's always like the first instinct is the best,
I agree.
Best answer.
That's a great one.
Did you guys see, I don't know if you saw this, but a couple weeks ago at the New York dog Halloween costume parade.
Oh, yes, of course.
That little dog that was David Byrne.
It was, I mean, all of the costumes, I was like, I will fly to New York just to go to this dog parade.
I know. This is when I'm like, why don't we live in New York?
Yeah, truly. Well, Charlotte,
this has been to that dog.
Obsessed.
Yes.
This has been so insightful and interesting, and we cannot thank you enough for taking the time for right answers mostly. I know that our female listeners will really enjoy this.
Absolutely.
Where
can people find you? Where can people find Alice?
Yeah, so you can buy our products at www.alicemushrooms.com. We're also on Instagram and TikTok at alice.mushrooms. And then we're in a lot of stores. So odds are that one of your favorite local shops carries us. We're also in Erewhon, all over LA. We're on Amazon.
Oh, really?
We're pretty easy to find these days.
Good for y'all.
I know.
We love it.
We do love it. Yeah, we're super inspired by, your story and being a female founder, and just also all the work that you're doing to help other people and women. And we're just really honored we got to have this chat today. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, of course. And everyone, all this information will be in the show notes as well. So, okay, thank you, Charlotte. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.